All right, we are here at my VermiHut Worm Tower, and today we are going to go ahead and rotate this worm tower, and we're going to take a tray off and harvest it. So, just want to show you what each one of these trays that are in here right now looks like. And it is this right here with all these holes in it. In fact, it's almost see-through with the amount of holes that are in here. This is how the worms come up and down throughout this worm tower system. So, let's go ahead and take the lid off here and kind of show you how all the trays enter this VermiHut. Now I run it with 4 trays. It comes with 5. I like to keep this one off so that I can use it in my other worm bins and I use it to harvest. But this tray is going to get filled with shredded cardboard and it's going to go right down here on the very bottom. And it's going to sit there for 60 days. And that's because we're just going to let it stay there and let liquid kind of drip down and maybe get inoculated with some microbes. 60 days later, it is going to come up one spot. And there, it's also just going to rest for 60 days. And now it's going to get a lot more liquid and it's going to get inoculated with all kinds of microbes. And at the end of that 60 days, it is going to be moist and it is going to be ready to feed. So when it's ready to feed after those 60 days, it comes up to the very top and it becomes the top feeding tray. And that is the business part of this worm tower. That's where we're going to put down all kinds of feedings and we're going to put down shredded cardboard. And the worms are going to be doing most of the work right up here. So after we've fed it for about 60 days, it is going to go down one tray to what I call the pre-harvest tray. And it is just going to sit there and get finished off by the worms while they eat all the shredded cardboard and food that is left over. And then after it's rested there for 60 days, it comes off and we harvest it. So again, enters the very bottom, stays there for 60 days, comes up here, one spot, and it stays there for 60 days. Now we're at 120 days. From there, it goes to the very top and it gets fed for 60 days. Now we're at 180 days. And then finally, it goes down to the pre-harvest tray where it just kind of sit there and finish being munched on. And we are at 240 days, and that's when it's time to harvest. So let's go ahead and go inside. We are going to harvest one of the trays, put this tray inside, and we are going to feed this top feeding tray, which is actually coming from here because we are going to rotate. All right, I'll see you inside. So we're back inside and I've taken all the trays off, and this is the basin. This is what will collect any kind of liquid if it were to come down, and it even has a spout right here. However, with the way I rotate, I never get any kind of liquid down here. In fact, you can see it is bone dry and the only thing that is left is some dust and maybe some mites that made their way down here. So let's go ahead and reassemble this VermiHut Worm Tower. So the first thing that goes on the basin is this M board, and it is used to try and give the worms a way to crawl back up into the trays if they find their way down into the basin. It doesn't work perfectly 100% well, but it is better than just having this part alone or having the thin piece of almost like paper-like material that comes with the VermiHut. That is kind of what they used before this. Now sometimes I'll rinse this off, but I'm just leaving it. This is what it looks like after I disassembled my tray after, well more than 60 days of just having that bottom tray on it. So the first tray to go on is a brand new tray that just has dry shredded cardboard on it. So I fill this all the way to the brim, and the next tray is going to sit on top of it. And this is how I introduce every new tray to my VermiHut. Now, if you just bought a VermiHut, what you can do is set 2 of these on your system, and that last tray you're going to put on, the third tray you're going to put on top, that's where you can put that cocoa core brick that they give you after you've hydrated it and feed it, etc. So you are going to start your VermiHut with 2 dry shredded cardboard trays just like this, and then a top feeding tray. So the next tray that's going up is a tray that was previously the bottom tray. This is the tray that was on the very bottom before, and as you can see, it's still pretty dry. It has just a little bit of dampness, but after well over 60 days, this is what it could look like. Now on the bottom, I'm seeing a little bit of dampness, and that's to be expected, but you can also see that it did get a little bit compressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fluff it up here real quick. So while this Old Inoculating Tray is sitting down here, it is going to receive all the liquid that's coming from our different feedings, and it is going to inoculate this tray with all kinds of microbes. The tray that goes just above this is called our pre-harvest tray. Now previously, this was our top feeding tray. This is the tray that we have been feeding for the last several videos. But its role right now is to just let the worms go ahead and eat whatever is left over. And it is the tray that we are going to harvest in 60 days. So I just wanted to point out one thing. Some of you may have noticed that we've got some gnaw marks right here on the edge of my VermiHut, and that's because I use this to harvest my other bins, and I left it outside my backyard one night, and the squirrels came over and sharpened their teeth on my VermiHut tray. So don't leave your trays outside. So again, we have stacked 3 trays on top of our VermiHut, and this is the tray you all are most familiar with because it is the one we have been feeding lately. And here is a peanut shell that we put in a couple times ago. In fact, let's go over what we put in here the last time. First, we added in a broccoli stalk, followed by some watermelon and a celery stalk and some carrots. And we put in a banana peel and more watermelon rinds. Next, we added some green mush to include pepper tops, broccoli, and nasty lettuce. Finally, we added a bit of yellow squash. And of course, we added our worm chow, pulverized eggshell grit, and some used coffee grounds. So I'm not expecting to find much of that except for maybe some fibers from broccoli stalks and these peanut shells. But we will go ahead and fluff this up, and you can see there's lots of worms in here. They are probably mostly in the previously top 2 layers, which would be our top feeding tray and our pre-harvest tray. So the majority of your worms will be in those top 2 trays. However, you still may find some in your lower inoculating trays, and that is just fine. In fact, when you first start your VermiHut, you might find the worms traveling all over the place as they just kind of explore and try to find out where the food is. Like I said, they're going to go anywhere there's moisture, which means they're going to climb up the sides, they may go into the lid, all that kind of thing. So we're just going to keep fluffing this up, and then we'll come back and we'll add our final tray on here. I'm really impressed with what we're seeing here. These are going to be just spectacular castings in 60 days or so. And any of this big stuff that we find, like peanut shells, it's not going to be a problem. Pretty big, and we'll just pull them right out. All right, perfect. We've got it all nice and level here, so it's going to be able to accept another tray. And if you're keeping up, like I said, we have 3 trays on here, and the next tray we're going to put on top is the one that we're going to start feeding, and that is the top feeding tray. Now, it used to be the oldest inoculating tray, so let's go ahead and get that one. And if we were to dig under here, you will see that it is probably mostly shredded cardboard, and that's exactly what it is. And that's because throughout its time, it has just kind of been accepting anything that falls through all those holes that are in the bottom of the tray. So on the top, we saw some damp shredded cardboard and a little bit of castings, but underneath what we're seeing is just kind of damp, almost dry shredded cardboard. And we're gonna mix it up because this thing is fantastic. It has got inoculated, and it even has some worms in it. So it's got a bit of a head start. Now the one below it that we were just manipulating has all kinds of worms. And what we're going to do here is feed this one because it is our new top feeding tray. It's the only tray that we feed. And all those worms that are underneath are going to sense the food, and they are going to come up and partake and eat from it. So we just want to kind of mix this up, and then we're going to make a good trench to put our food right here. All right, there we go. Now, believe it or not, this VermiHut has somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 worms in it. So our goal is to feed this top tray and get most of them to come up here to turn this into castings over the next 60 days. So after rotation, we are going to do a feeding just like we do every other feeding, and that is start by putting in shredded cardboard. And you can actually see just how bone dry this is compared to the stuff that has been in the oldest inoculating tray. So because I have 3,000 to 4,000 worms in here, I'm going to be able to feed them pretty good. Now, if you just got a VermiHut and you're trying to figure out how much food to feed, I would say that should be max your first feeding. Probably not even that, just the strawberry tops, if that, because you want to make sure your worms are getting used to it and you want to see just how much they eat. Now, I've been running this VermiHut for 4 years, so I know they eat a ton of food. So I'm going to give them a bunch of strawberries, and that's going to enable them to get up here and turn the this into castings. But that's not all. We're going to give them some more food scraps. So we'll put in a banana there. I'm sorry, a banana peel. And then we'll give them some more broccoli stalks, just like that. And let's go in with some of this, what is this, lettuce mush right there. And some more broccoli stalks and some peppers, just like that. Let's add some color. There we go. So fairly big feeding for how many worms I have in here, but not too bad. Again, I can't reiterate, if this is your first time feeding your worms, you need to go very lightly. In fact, check out one of my videos where I show you how to start a worm bin so you can kind of determine how much food to feed them and what it looks like about 6 or 7 days later. Now, as I'm gathering food scraps, I just put them in my freezer, so all my food goes into my worm bins after having previously been frozen. And what I'm putting in right now is worm chow. It's just some expired grains from my pantry. That is just another food source for them. And then next, I like to put in some used coffee grounds. It's just another great food source for them because it's shredded so finely. And it's just another way to help me get rid of some of my waste and turn it into nutrients for my garden. And then finally, I like to add a little bit of eggshell grit. The worms absolutely go after it. If you've seen any of my time lapses, you see how quickly they come up for it. And they use it in their gizzards to break up the food that they ingest, kind of like some birds do. So next, we're just going to go ahead and bury this up. And if you are counting at home, you'll know that I have one tray left because the pre-harvest tray that we had on our stack is no longer in service, right? That's the one that comes out every time we rotate and we add a new tray to the bottom of the stack. So what we're going to do with that pre-harvest tray is we are going to put it on top, and I do something called the agitation method. So we put the old pre-harvest tray on top, and that's just temporarily because what we want to do is get all these worms that are in here out of here, because these are the castings that I'm going to be able to put into my storage and that I'm going to be able to use in my garden. So what you do for the agitation method is you do exactly what I'm doing right here. We're agitating the castings. They're a little clumped up, and we're letting the worms know, hey, there is something in your way here that is bothering you, so go ahead and go down through all these holes right here and go to the next level. And what we're going to do is we are just going to leave them alone periodically for about maybe 5 minutes at a time, and as they continue to go down and get disturbed by the lights overhead, we are just going to scrape off the top layer. So I'm going to show you that in just a few quick clips, and then we will be back after I have harvested this whole tray by using that agitation method. So we're back, and this has been agitated about 5 or 6 times. We got one last worm trying to make its way down through the last hole there. And what we have here is all the castings that we harvested. And we got about 6.5 pounds. Typically we'll get about 10, but that's because I just didn't feed this many times this time around with the hurricanes and all the travel that we did. So let's help that worm get down just like that. And we are going to lift this off because that is an empty tray now that we're going to use to harvest other bins. But look, all these worms are the worms that came from that tray that had all those castings. So we are done here, and we have rotated our whole VermiHut system using 4 trays. So if you're using 3 trays, just have 1 inoculating tray on the bottom. If you're like me and you use 4 trays, have 2 inoculating trays on the bottom. And if you use all 5 trays, then you have 3 inoculating trays, and then everybody always has a top feeding tray and a pre-harvest tray down below. And if you're still not quite sure how we rotate this system, go ahead and check on this video right here. It's the last time we rotated, and that might help you understand it from a different angle. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing fantastic. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now. Right there, and those right there.
And on your pointer.
Oh my gosh, worms everywhere. And another one on my pointer.
Oh, and on your middle finger.
Worms everywhere.
Good grief.